June is the best month in the garden because everything is going off and growing beautifully and the pests haven't found anything yet. So everything's thriving and undisturbed, and I know that's not gonna last. So while it is lasting, I'm gonna go around and give you a full garden tour of everything that is growing. Right now here it is June 11th, and there's a lot of cool stuff that I can't wait to show you. So we'll get to the green stalks and what's going on in the greenhouse at the end of this, but I'd like to first start with my favorite new addition to the garden, which is the tea garden I added. And if you missed this, definitely go back and watch the original video where I planted all of this out, because the transformation has been huge. It's so satisfying to see everything start to fill in after you get stuff planted like that. So I got these 3 raised beds as part of my product testing partnership with Epic Gardening, and they have this amazing ledge that is perfect for putting your garden to glass drink on. This is sun tea that I'm working on right now. And so it just kind of seemed like it was meant to be a tea garden, and I really just went with it, and I'm trying to be more spontaneous in the garden this year, so I had a totally different plan for this space. Once I got here, it just immediately was clear to me what it needed to be. So the front bed I've been calling my orange and yellow bed because I did everything orange and yellow in here. This is calendula that obviously has not bloomed yet. Stevia. I have some random celery in here. I don't even like celery, but I just decided I've never grown it before. Maybe I will like celery if I grow it myself. Lots and lots of marigolds. This is pineapple sage, and I wish you could smell it because it smells so good. And this is Elysium, I think. I don't know, I'm probably butchering that, but I actually got it on clearance for like $2, and it's going nuts right now. See all that stuff coming off of it? I've been calling this my Barbie bed because it's all about the pinks and reds and purples. So I've got, these are actually purple emperor nasturtiums that are gonna trail over the side. I'm really excited to see these come in. They're very happy already. I have an English lavender here, some violas. I don't know how this one ended up in here because it really should be in the front bed, but we're going with it. I just watered, so everything's a little bit knocked down. Some snapdragons, and a lettuce that I had already cut back, and a new lettuce that I just popped in to fill this corner. Obviously the star of the show is this hibiscus, which I think is going to end up taking over most of this bed. And boy, she has been blooming non-stop. Like, I can't even begin to tell you how many blooms I've gotten off of this. So I've just been pulling them because they only last a couple days. So as soon as they start to turn, I pull them off and I separate the petals and I dry them for tea. And when I planted these, I had a few people tell me it's roselle that's for tea, not hibiscus. And that's true. Roselle is the more common one that is used, but most, if not all, hibiscus are edible. I say most only because there's a lot of hybrids out there, and of course they haven't been tested. And the back bed is more my savory tea herb bed. It also has some beans in it. I did these yellow beans that are just like a bush bean to fill in and soften these edges. And I also have some burgundy okra in here, which did a lot better direct sowing than those transplants I had in the greenhouse. So we'll definitely stick with that from now on. I have rosemary, my favorite smell ever. These are really tall marigolds. I can't remember the name, but they're big ones. And this is lemon verbena. I've got dill, oregano, basil, and even some parsley in here. So I know it may seem like a bit of a stretch to call that one a tea garden, but you can use all of those herbs in teas. In fact, rosemary and oregano tea has so many medicinal benefits. This is the tomato bed, and there's a few last lettuces in here from early on in the season that are just starting to bolt, but they taste perfectly fine, so I've just left them in as long as possible. All the tomatoes are looking really good. These are dwarf indeterminates, so they generally grow to a much smaller maximum height to begin with. They'll only get to be like 4 or 5 feet, so even though they're really short, got these beautifully sturdy stems. This is the only one that's not so happy, and I think it's only because this is blocking some of the sun, and there was also a lettuce plant here blocking a lot of the sun, so it just hasn't had the chance to like really perk up yet. But we're gonna leave it and see what it does. I also have a mix of Tokyo scallions and King Richard leeks in here. The lettuce is all gonna be coming out of here pretty soon in the next week or so, but I do have a lot of marigolds that are just starting to fill in. Basil, and I planted a bunch of basil seeds in here the other day, but it doesn't look like any of them have come up yet. But the tomatoes are already flowering, and at this end I ended up impulse buying 2 tomatillo plants. Actually, I have 3. There's one in the green stock too, and they are so happy. I'm a little worried because they have so many flowers on them and the stem doesn't seem like that thick to support all that weight. I've never grown tomatillos before, so I don't know. Maybe that's normal. I don't know if I'm supposed to prune this, so send help if you know what I should be doing and I'm doing something wrong. I have 4 of these whiskey barrels on the corners of that, there, and there. This one I just did cool season lettuces, and then I stuck a purple broccoli in here and some celery. I'm not sure what's going to end up happening with this one once all this lettuce gets picked in the next week or so. I'm hoping the celery fills in a lot of the gaps, but I need to stick something else in there. I think the tiki torches actually do a really good job of like helping to define the space a little bit. I also got a tea plant. I've always wanted one, and this one is cold hardy, but I may end up just throwing it in the greenhouse anyway. That's why I didn't put it in the ground and keeping it in a pot. There's a lot of snapdragons in here, which are my favorite flower. This is some kind of squash, I believe. Maybe a summer squash, but I honestly don't remember. And then over here, it kind of got knocked down in the wind, but this is portcullis. Again, I think I'm saying that wrong, but I think they're really pretty. This is my favorite flower this year. This is Nemesis or Nemesis. Again, I don't know. I'm butchering the names today. But I have another one in this bed that I like even more because it's like variegated. But the red of this, I just think looks so nice in my little sitting area. It just kind of grounds the space. I did end up putting the Epic tomato cages onto these 2 whiskey barrel buckets. And what I'm trying to do with these is actually train this squash to grow up the trellis, because they're so sturdy and they have such big spaces between that I think it will work really well for squash, but I'm going to test it for you and find out. And there's just a lot of like violas in here, and I already succession sowed some calendula in here so that when the violas really start to die back, the calendula can fill in those garden gaps. And it's kind of the same thing in this one. There's a squash, but it's not happy. I don't know, it's not unhappy, but it's not like thriving. All my other ones are way bigger. And then just a random broccoli. I like impulse bought a bunch of broccoli starts, and then I had nowhere to put them and I forgot how big they get, and they've just kind of been thrown everywhere. The gardener's beds from last year are still doing really great. I did restain them this year just to keep on top of it, but they're holding up fine, and they've got the self-watering trays underneath, which I love. But the trellises are where I think I've really hit a groove, where last year I had a lot of issues getting them filled up before, like, I think it was like late August before I really had the trellises looking like this. So I was pretty aggressive about early plantings of my snap peas this year, and I'm actually doing a variety from row 7 called Beauregard, and they're purple, which, you know, I wanted to add a lot more purple to my garden this year. And the best part about this, though, is that a lot of purple vegetables turn green when you cook them, and these do not. And the flavor is really, really good. So I actually need to pick a bunch of these, but they're really, really happy. Snuck in with those snap peas are my cucumbers. I have Suyo Market More lemon cucumbers, and one other one that I keep forgetting every time I tell you guys this, and I never go back and figure out what it was. So it's gonna be a surprise for all of us, I guess. I always stuff the front row of these with violas and pansies just to get some early color. But the ones I did last year are self-seeded. So like I planted this one, and then this one was like, hello, I live here too. Honestly, I think it's so much prettier. I love it when they have multiple colors like this. There's actually one on my deck that's my favorite that I'll show you in a minute. What you don't know is that I had originally been thinking of putting a mini tea garden in this front bed before I knew about or had those other ones that ended up being the tea garden. So I had already direct sown a lot of those seeds into this bed. So there's a little bit of overlap in what's planted here and what's planted over there. I did do calendula in here, and I had these chives that I overwintered from last year. I've got a couple of those beans, and I also have some zinnia babies going. I threw more broccoli in here. It is starting to head, and there's actually some further down the line that are way bigger than this one. Last year I followed square foot gardening pretty strictly in this space, and this year I'm planting way more intensively and everything looks way happier. So I'm just done with all the spacing rules. There's more of those purple emperor nasturtiums and another parsley here. And then I also have some eggplant in here. These would be the diamond variety because they're best for our northern climate. This bed to the right is pretty similar. I think it's spaced out a little bit better, but I'm actually I have my Zuna in here and some arugula, and I'm letting it go to seed because I'm gonna do something really interesting as an experiment with the seeds. This is my biggest original oregano plant that all the other oregano in my garden comes from. It actually looks like it's ready to be cut back a little bit so it doesn't start spreading like crazy. Still getting mushrooms. Still. I'm really a little bit sick of them. I still think it's a really cool way to utilize a space that really can't grow anything else. But when I come out here every morning, I have to be like, oh my God, don't step on them, because they're everywhere and they just appear randomly anytime it rains. I thought it would be way too late in the season by now to be getting any, but it rained and we got another flush. This is the broccoli I've had my eye on. Like, I think that's ready to go today. It's pretty big. Oh, it looks so good. And then inside of this is where I succession sowed carrots and beets because it's nice and damp and cool in there. I'm having the best Swiss chard year I've ever had. I need to document this for posterity because she is thick. Look at her. And so these stems are getting so heavy that they're literally breaking off and harvesting themselves, and I have to keep checking every day so that they don't go bad. I'm doing Lakota squash. I know we've been keeping an eye on that one because she's the giant. She can go 10 to 20 feet. Didn't realize that when I planted her in this bed, but we're working with it. I've got summer, I've got zucchini, I've got a round zucchini in here, and I also have Waltham butternut squash. These trellises have the same cucumber snap pea combo. The back trellises are a little bit different. This is my other nemesis. And she gets a little bit worn down in the rain, but it's self-deadheading, and it comes back this beautiful, vibrant, purpley orange pink mix. And I'm so upset it's not a perennial here because if I can't find it next year, I'm just gonna lose it. The difference between this middle bed over here and this one is this one has the teddy bear dwarf sunflowers in it, and this one has the Swiss chard as the spine in the center there. So I'm doing the sunflowers in this one because some varieties of sunflowers emit something into the soil that prevents the growth of other plants around it. But you can't ever find online like which varieties are okay and which aren't. You kind of just have to test it for yourself. And so far so good. Everything seems to be doing fine with the sunflowers here. It's gonna be so pretty when they pop up though in the middle and give me that bright yellow color. Oh my God, I just tripped on these. New Zealand spinach, which self-seeded in here. I don't really like it that much. The flavor is fine. It's just that you have it on this huge stalk, which you don't eat because it's really tough. So you have to pull each leaf off individually, and it just takes forever, but it's self-seeded. And it's supposed to be hard to germinate, but it is all over the place here. Oh my God. Oh my God. You guys, I've never been able to grow cauliflower before. It always bolts. That is so exciting. I legitimately didn't know that was in there. I have all the same squash in this bed, but I also have this patty pan, which just has the prettiest leaves. Such a pretty squash plant. Oh, and there's a Thai basil in here. I totally forgot about that. Our last row is looking a little bare, but that's just because they're peppers and they take a little bit longer to take off. I have so many different kinds of peppers in here, and this GM just started blooming. I also have cosmos in here just along the back corners because it gets so tall. The maple tree is always seeding itself in here. But yeah, it's mostly peppers. There's a couple herbs. I did some basil, more parsley, and a snapdragon on each end. And then for the trellis, I'm doing one tomato on each trellis, which you're really not supposed to put tomatoes and peppers together because they compete, but I'm doing it anyway. I don't know, everything looks fine. It doesn't seem like that big of a deal to me. And I mean, if it is, then we'll learn something, right? And one side of this has sugar pie pumpkins, just one on either side that I'm trailing up the edges. And the other one has a casparita, which is a white mini pumpkin. I don't know what this is. I must have planted this, right? There's some carrots in here. Yeah, I really don't know if this is a weed or not. It smells kind of herbal, but I do not know. So that's where my artichokes and one of my culinary sage plants lives. We've got the asparagus, of course. The rest of this bed is carrots, which I'm intentionally letting go to flower just for pretty cut flowers and for the bees. I have a peony there. I have more rhubarb. There's a blueberry bush in there somewhere, and all my hardneck and softneck garlic, which I'm watching like a hawk because these scapes are just about almost ready. Some of them are ready when they have that full bend in them, and you can either pull them or snap them. I try to pull them and half the time they just snap. I love garlic scapes just as much as I love garlic. They have a really nice mild garlic flavor, and the texture is more like crispy like asparagus. I got this 12 pack of these on clearance for $2 because there were no blooms on them, and I was like, I don't know what color they are. This will be a fun surprise, and they've turned out to be this most beautiful variegated. I'm gonna have to save the seeds from this one. My grapevine is starting to bounce back from the black rot last year. I cut it back all the way to this little stump of a root. That was all that I left, and I wasn't sure it was gonna make it, but it was a last resort attempt. That was the only thing I could really do. It's happy again, so hopefully it stays that way. I do have these 5 grow bags here just because I literally had nowhere else to put them, and it actually worked out pretty well, although eventually I'd like to do window boxes here instead. But I had planted some fennel, it never came up. There's another aurora pepper out here. There's another tomato out here that I forgot about, and there's also one red cabbage. I planted 4, and this is the only one that made it. The orchard finally got mulched, and everything out here is also looking really good. This is my Lang Jujube. This is my Galaxy Peach, which I wasn't sure had made it, but it finally just put on some growth. Gold Cot Apricot is super bushy. Granny Smith, Reliance Peach. This is my fig tree. Macintosh Apple, Persimmon, Pineapple Pear. This is the Pink Lady Apple. She is huge. Very excited for this one. I've never tried these, but people rave about them. All right, let me take you back to the greenhouse and show you what's going on in there. You might already know most of this stuff, but there's been a little progress. I've kind of let the green stalks go a little bit nuts because, again, I'm trying to get as many of these seeds as possible for my secret experiment that I'll show you guys hopefully soon. But I've still got Swiss chard and beets going in here. There's some lettuce, there's some basil, there's some okra. It's just kind of messy, but it's productive. And this one, I'm afraid, is just not getting enough light because the plants are happy, but they're not growing as fast as I would expect them to be, although this pepper's pretty happy. It's got some good stuff going on. Everything's just a little leggy. I did like straw flowers on the top, and then I think I did like dinosaur kale here. This is just a leftover lettuce, and there's some marigolds in here as well, or zinnias, and a couple extra tomatoes. Oh my God, I forgot about those. There's so many tomatoes. So we have our orange mint plant, pretty happy, sending out runners, trying to take over. The ginger really took off. I started watering it way more aggressively, like drowning it. And it's doing pretty well, but the stems, like the leaves, keep getting stuck. And they get stuck like this, and when I try to help them, they break. So I don't know, we're just kind of leaving it, hoping it works itself out. That is a snake plant that I'm propagating. It's been going on for a few months now. Snake plants are really hard to propagate. And a jade plant baby that a friend gave me. I cannot keep spider plants alive to save my life. I don't know what it is. I know they're supposed to be the easiest plants, so that one is on its way out. These ones, however, are actually looking pretty happy. I don't want to jinx it though. This is a calancho. It's been blooming this beautiful bright orange since March, and it just started to kind of die down with the blooms and get a little bit crispy. This is a ZZ plant I've been propagating for months. It looks really unhappy. I think it's getting way too much light out here. Cat grass, which the cats want nothing to do with, of course. This is one of my favorite new discoveries this year. This is a variegated basil plant that is sterile, so it will never bolt, and you can only propagate it through cuttings, which I'm working on doing right now. This was one of the plants that Burpee sent me. They also sent me this eucalyptus, which I've always wanted to grow. I just don't have the patience for it. The Ichiban eggplant is so happy. It's just started sending out a ton of flowers. We have a jalapeno, which is trying to match the Ichiban in height. Banana pepper. This one is getting like weirdly floppy. I don't know what's going on underground because the leaves look okay, but it is not happy. I don't know what's wrong with it. This is just a sweet pepper that I started from seed myself. And this is what I'm most excited about. my Aurora pepper. Purple Aurora pepper. This is the shishito. This is a sweet California bell pepper, ancho pepper. The Malabar spinach is really happy, but the rattlesnake beans have trailed all the way up. So what I'm trying to do is train it over to here, and then I have these clips that will go up here and then on to the actual cross tie. It's another shishito, another Aurora. This is another sweet pepper, banana pepper, jalapeno again. This is a Cubanelle, which I actually like better than a banana pepper personally. I have a cayenne, which is looking really happy. I normally can't get the hot peppers to be this happy, but in the greenhouse, it's easy. This is another bell pepper. Look at how different the growth habit is of that. This is an orange sweet bell pepper. It's so bushy, and look how many flowers are on it. There's a cayenne back there. God, I don't even remember what kind of squash this was now. Well, we'll find out soon enough. The lemon tree is trying to bloom. I don't know if I should let it or not. I've never had one, so if somebody knows, please tell me. And the orange tree was looking okay. The bottom leaves died off and started falling off this week, but I kind of think that was just the stress of transplanting it because it's putting on new growth. It's really dusty from the pollen right now. But it looks healthy other than those bottom ones that I just discarded. So as you can probably tell, I'm very, very excited that the garden is as full as it is, and there's so many good things that are just about to start fruiting, and I'm sure the next time that I get to do a tour for you guys, we'll actually be able to harvest a bunch of stuff because we're really just now reaching that stage in the garden. But yeah, I think that's pretty much all that I have to show you today. So thank you so much for gardening with me, and happy growing.